r/AskReddit created by routinereddit. Historians of Reddit, what is the biggest screw you moment in history? So when France exiles Napoleon Bonaparte, the first time, they didn't think to change out military personnel. So he basically rolls up to the first French outpost he gets to, says backquotes up and begins reassembling an army. By the time he gets to Paris, he's got enough forces that France is like, well, welcome back. He supposedly said to the first soldiers he encountered, any of you who dare oppose the emperor, fire. The soldiers cheered and joined him. This reminds me of the execution of Michael Nee. Soldiers, when I give the command to fire, fire straight at my heart. Wait for the order. It will be my last to you. I protest against my condemnation. I have fought 100 battles for France, and not one against her. Soldiers, fire. The soldiers fired and killed him. That's metal as heck. You can't fire me. I quit. The French newspapers, which, in 1815, were subject to the censor, announced the departure of Bonaparte from Elba, his progress through France, and his entry into Paris in the following ingenious manner. The 9th of March, the Anthropophagus has quitted his den 10th. The Corsicanoga has landed at Cape Juan 11th. The Tiger has arrived at Gap 12th. The Monster slept at Grenoble 13th. The Tyrant has passed through Lyons 14th. The Usurper is directing his steps towards Dijon, but the brave and loyal Burgundians have risen en masse and surrounded him on all sides. 18th. Bonaparte is only 60 leagues from the capital. He has been fortunate enough to escape the hands of his pursuers. 19th. Bonaparte is advancing with rapid steps, but he will never enter Paris. 20th. Napoleon will, tomorrow, be under our ramparts. 21st. The Emperor is at Fontainebleau. 22nd. His Imperial and Royal Majesty, yesterday evening, arrived at the Tuileries, amidst the joyful acclamations of his devoted and faithful subjects. That is amazing. I will admit that my French history is just awful, but I was curious, how do the French treat the history of Napoleon? Is it like how the Russians treat Stalin and Lenin? How Americans treat someone like Washington, or say Teddy Roosevelt? Or is it somewhere in between? Like, comment, and subscribe for daily Reddit videos. I would say the moment that Rallo swore allegiance to the French king, the bishops present suggested that Rallo kiss the king's foot as a sign of submission. It was probably an idea intended to humiliate Rallo, and was not taken very well. After some discussion, it was agreed that one of Rallo's men would do it. However, the person chosen lifted the king's foot and, without bending down, brought it up to his mouth. Not surprisingly, the king fell over amid general laughter in the court. Following this amusing scene, the king and his men swore to honor the concession to Rallo. That's great. Just freaking flip the king over instead. That whole image just made me laugh. That was just how Rallo rolled. How he rolled. Ultimate flip over. That's ballsy. This requires some background. The Spartans were famously blunt. They were trained to get to the point when speaking, instead of using artsy and beautiful language that would have been common at the time, by being bitten on the thumb if they became long-winded. Now to the meat. Philip II of Macedon, Alexander the Great's father, sent the Spartans a letter saying, "Would you like me to enter your land as friend or foe?" The Spartans responded with one word, "Neither." Philip was irate. He then sent another long-winded message. "If once I enter into your territories, I will destroy you all, never to rise again." The Spartans then sent back one word, "If." It was like putting your head in a lion's mouth, and I love it. That's where the meaning of laconic comes from. Exactly. Laconia is pretty much another name for Sparta, and the people were called Lacedaemons. Not 100% another name for Sparta, it is the name of the general area around Sparta. You are correct. The best kind of correct. Technically correct is the best kind of correct. What? My high school sports teams were nicknamed Spartans, and our yearbook was always called Lacedaemon. There was no internet to look this crap up on back then, so I never realized it was app history nerds screwing with us. They couldn't spare 5 minutes out of the 720 days of mindless drudgery that was high school to tell us a couple of cool facts about Sparta/Laconia. Useless, I tell you. It's like they wanted us to be disinterested in learning. Sounds like you played in the team, but they played you like pros. Suck my butt, cop. Napoleon invited his brother-in-law to speak with him before his coronation as emperor to remind the brother-in-law that he objected to Napoleon marrying Josephine because Napoleon would amount to nothing. Now this is the kind of petty screw you I can get behind. As a nanny age 17 I worked at a chateau built by Napoleon for Josephine in the south of France. What a slap. How can he slap? For those of you who haven't seen a slap, here you go. A pirate known as Jane LeFort had a bounty of $500 put on him by a governor. So he put a $5,000 bounty on the governor. He also helped Andrew Jackson out at the Battle of New Orleans against the British. Lol, I was gonna say, a pirate with a name like Jane LeFort must have had some significant connection to New Orleans. Oh yeah. If you're ever down there you need to check out the Jane LeFort National Forest. Absolutely beautiful. No you. The best use lol. Guy used the reverse card before it was cool. Nay sir, you. This is already one of my favorite threads in Reddit history. Renault, Chilean warrior who had both his hands cut off by the conquistadors for raising arms against the Spanish. Instead of letting himself serve as a message of helplessness in the face of the invaders, the crazy bastard strapped swords to his stumps and went on the warpath. So this guy was ancient Chilean Wolverine? More like Chilean Wolverine, origins Deadpool. So it means that Galvarine confirmed. May I add that when he got defeated again, the Spanish were impressed and offered him to surrender, but he spit in the commander's face, so they literally fed him to their dogs. Forgive me if I'm wrong. According to that link, that is one theory, but there are other theories as to how he died. All we know for sure is that once he got defeated the second time, he died. In the 1970s, a small town of Vulcan, West Virginia asked for state funding to replace a bridge into town. The state legislature refused to grant Vulcan the funding they needed. Instead, the town appealed to the Soviet Union for aid. After hearing about the request, the state legislature immediately granted over $1 million for the town to build a new bridge. If a small town in WV asking for Soviet funding in the middle of the Cold War isn't a big middle finger to the state government, then I don't know what is. The funny part is that 2 Soviet representatives at the US Embassy actually came over to look at the broken bridge and seriously considered funding the rebuilding to piss off the Americans. Imagine the propaganda the Soviets could have pushed from that. On the crowning of King Henry VII, he backdated his own reign to before the date of the Battle of Bosworth, meaning anyone who was loyal to him now, but had shown any sign of opposition at Bosworth, was now a traitor and an enemy to the realm. Justice served. Dang. That sounds like the premise behind the Blackadder. Oh my god, I've killed Uncle Dickie. Oh dear, Richard III. This is more petty, but when Taft bragged to his friends via telegram about scaling a mountain on horseback, that it was a few thousand feet, clear weather, all in all not too difficult, his friend replied, "How is horse?" Taft was a chunky boy. Didn't he get stuck in his bathtub? Edit, a myth, apparently, but the man was certainly no stranger to a good meal. I've always wondered if that's where the term tubby comes from. I've heard people say tub of lard as well. Like, that guy over there is a complete tub of lard. Well, you can buy plastic tubs of actual lard at the store, so now I'm all kinds of confused. And the tubs are round, which brings us full circle, as it were. The reply of the Zaporozhian Cossacks is the best response to a demand for surrender, ever. In response to requests by the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire to desist attacks and submit Zaporozhian Cossacks to the Turkish Sultan. O Sultan, Turkish devil and angel devil's kith and kin, secretary to Lucifer himself. What the devil kind of knight art thou, that canst not slay a hedgehog with your naked butt? The devil craps, and your army eats. Thou shalt not, thou son of a whore, make subjects of Christian sons. We have no fear of your army. By land and by sea we will battle with thee. Screw thy mother. Thou Babylonian scullion, Macedonian wheelwright, brewer of Jerusalem, goat banger of Alexandria, swineherd of Greater and Lesser Egypt, pig of Armenia, Podolian thief, catamite of Tartary, hangman of Commandants, and fool of all the world and underworld, an idiot before God, grandson of the serpent, and the crick in our wiener, pig snout, mare's butt, slaughterhouse cur, unchristened bro, screw thine own mother. So the Zaporozhians declare, you lowlife, You won't even be herding pigs for the Christians. Now we'll conclude, for we don't know the date, and don't own a calendar, the moon's in the sky, the year with the Lord, the day's the same over here as it is over there, for this kiss our butt. Kashovai and Ivan Serko, with the whole Zaporozhian host. There's a painting of this moment with all the Cossacks laughing as they compose the letter. I'll never get tired of that painting. You can hear them just looking at it. Also, Ilya Repin's an amazing painter in general, and the rest of his stuff's always worth a look. It's a great depiction, and you can really imagine the arguments going back and forth over which insults to put in next. Tell him to screw his mother. We already did that, tell him again. Can we just agree that whoever put "and the crick" in our wiener is a goddamn legend? I second the motion. More weight. Giles more freaking weight Corey. I remember a cracked article from what must be pre-2014 about the most intense people in history, and the only line I remember is along the lines of Giles Corey was unimpressed, as he already had to deal with the weight of his colossal balls every morning. Old Cracked was so good, now they're basically BuzzFeed.